Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our monthly Missouri Open Door Workshop. Today we're doing self-determination and assistive technology, and we're going to have a special guest that I'll introduce in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and ask you if you'll just please in the chat tell us who you are and who you're with, and anything else you'd like us to know about you. I'm going to give everybody about another minute to get in and get started because we have a lot to do today. So as you all come in, first of all, welcome. Please put in the chat who you are and who you're with. If there's anything else you'd like us to know about you, we'd love to know that. I'm actually going to go ahead and get started because we have a pretty full afternoon. So my name is Julie Reynolds. I'm with the Life Course Framework Nexus. I never know really what the appropriate words are. And you are here at the Missouri Open Door Monthly Workshop. Go ahead, Angelina. So just to kind of get started, I'm going to do some shameless product promotion. So we do Missouri Family to Family, which is the Missouri Family Resource Center, sponsors 4 Good Life groups. You can see here, there are Good Life groups for everyone. We have a blast off, as you can see, for ages 13 and under, a launch into life course for 14 to 26-year-olds, planning for ages 27 and older, and then a sibling center Good Life, really great for people whose siblings might have some kind of developmental disability. I'm through talk and chat on how you can register for those. We really would love families to attend those and get information from our center. Okay, Angelina. So we're here under the auspices of the Missouri No Wrong Door program. I'm going to have to look at how long we've been doing these open doors, but really the No Wrong Door, you guys are all there coming in, or some kind of a front door to some kind of a support system. So what we're really trying to do is really bring people together, build relationships to really help support people and their caregivers, their family, all those folks, so they can make sure they know all their options and what's available for long-term services and supports. Okay, Angelina. And then this next slide is just sort of a little bit about No Wrong Door and our statewide partners, which many of you are a part of. Go ahead. I am on Sprint now. As you all are coming in too, I know there's more coming in. Please go ahead and put who you are and who you're with in the chat. So I want to do just a really quick overview on Medicare. So a lot of you folks that are on here know that you've got people that you support that are on Medicaid that may also be on Medicare. They may be on both and be dually eligible, or they may just be on Medicare. You may have some family members of the people you support that are on Medicare. And many of the folks you work with may qualify for Medicare in the future. So really my message today is the more you know, the better you're going to be able to support people, as Medicare time comes along. So Medicare is both for people over 65 and older, and also people with disabilities. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to give you a couple resources here. First of all, just Medicare.gov. There's a lot of really good information in there about plans, enrollment, finding promotions, and they've got some really, really good publications out there, some one-pagers and some booklets to really tell you about Medicare, what's available, sorts of things. I'll also put links to this in the chat when I'm done. There's a book, Medicare and You 2022, which is a really great guide for all the things you need to know about Medicare. So, and I kind of put this here. It comes in everything. The number of languages it's in is amazing. Large print, braille, audio. You can even get out an ebook, and you can order it in paper. So those are both some places where there's some great resources. Also, Medicare open enrollment starts in October and runs through December, and we'll do a little bit more about that in September. So go ahead, Angelina. And then my last thing I just want to remind is Missouri Claim. They're the best resource you can get here in Missouri to learn more about Medicare and all kinds of things. There to advise and educate people. And I think one of the folks that works at Missouri Claim said that their goal is always to get a win and the best outcome for the beneficiaries that are either going to be on Medicare or that are getting Medicare now. So just kind of keep that in mind. They can help with enrollment. So if you've got people that are getting ready to go on to Medicare. Also, I just want to remind that they're free and unbiased and confidential. So they're not an insurance agency. They're not going to tell anyone what to do. They're going to give you all the options. So there's lots of stuff out there, commercials and stuff with, Joe Dameth and Jimmy Walker about Advantage plans, which are just great. but there's other plans available, traditional Medicaid and other things that Claim can help you kind of sort through, and what are the best Advantage plans that are out there. So they have about 300 volunteer counselors that are all trained and certified as Medicare counselors. So on the next slide, you'll take that, Angelina, there's their information on how to contact them. And I will put all these contacts in the chat a couple times throughout the conversation here. So I'm going to turn it over in just a moment to Jane St. John and let her introduce herself. I do want to mention, as I see more and more people coming in, please go ahead and put who you are and who you're with in the chat, and anything else you'd like us to know. We'd love to hear it. And I am done. So that was my shortest thing ever, I think. So Jane, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. All right. Looks like I have control now, so yay. So I'm Jane St. John. I'm with the University of Missouri, Kansas City Institute for Human Development, and I'm with the Life Course Nexus team, as is Julie. And probably my most important role is I'm a mom of Ben, who you see throughout a lot of these pictures. And Ben is 32 and has a developmental disability. So I love these. I've actually attended several of these assistive technology webinars because it's really interesting to learn all the different things we can try. So anyway, thanks for having me today. And I'm not going to spend much time on myself because I really want to get down to the information for you guys. For today, for my part, I really want to, I think before we start talking about the good stuff, the different technology, we really need to understand what self-determination is, and also talk about decision making, because I don't believe you can talk about self-determination without also talking about how people make their decisions. And then we'll talk about some different ways that people can be supported to make decisions and be self-determined. And then I will turn it over to Scout, who will discuss all the different kind of supports and everything that you can use. So next, please. So what is self-determination? So Michael Waymeyer and some of his group have defined it as the attitudes and abilities required to act as the primary causal agent in one's life and to make choices regarding one's actions free from external influence or interference. What that means is, instead of other people causing things to happen in your life, you are the one that actually moves to act on your own life. So you make the decisions, you direct what you want to happen in your own life. So that's what being a causal agent means. It also means things like assuming control and having control of your own life. And then, of course, as I talked about earlier, you can't talk about self-determination without really talking about the right to make your own decisions rather than having other people acting upon you by making decisions for you. Next, please. So self-determination has several different pillars, I guess you will, is the right terminology. The first of which is freedom, right? The freedom to make choices, the freedom to have the life that you want, to have that vision for a good life and be able to do things that move you towards that trajectory of what you want in your life. The second pillar is support. So you have to be able to have the supports that you need, things like technology, all the different parts of the star that we think about, whether it's relationships or building your own skills or using technology or things in the community or paid supports, and how those things all work together. And it's unique to each person. There is no one size fits all when we talk about support. Responsibility. So when we have freedom, we also have responsibility to give back, right? To contribute to your community, to other people. So often I think people think about people with disabilities as always taking, always needing things. And so being able to give back and have those reciprocal roles in other people's lives, I think is so important. And so that's where that responsibility comes in. Empower. We want to empower the person to have that vision for a good life, to have their own wants, needs, desires, and focusing on their abilities rather than just their disabilities. We also want to make sure that we always involve the person, whether they have a guardian or whether they don't have a guardian and they're able to make their own legal decisions. That person needs to be involved in all decisions that are talked about, that are decided about him or her. Hopefully they're making their own decisions, but even if they're not, they should be a part of those discussions, and what they want should be respected. The phrase that is often used in self-advocacy groups is nothing about me without me. And that's really what this particular pillar is about. And then again, I think all of these things are about respect, right? We respect that person. All things that happen in that person's life are respectful of that person. So that's really what self-determination is about. Next, please. So I believe that the essence of life is self-determination. We know that through various research that's quoted on here, that people who have better or greater self-determination are often healthier. They have better health outcomes in their life. They're more independent. They're more well-adjusted. They're more integrated into their communities. And I think this is one of the most important things. People that are more self-determined are better able to recognize and resist abuse. And that's so important because we know that people with disabilities and our elderly, that as we're talking about people who, might be needing self-determination or that we might be talking about self-determination or decision-making, are some of the most highly abused people. And so being able to recognize and stop abuse in its tracks is so important. Next, please. So how do we get to be self-determined? And you've probably heard this if you've ever heard me talk, and I'm sure on other of these webinars, we talk about, our life trajectory, and we talk about how do we move that life trajectory? Well, we move it by having life experiences throughout our life. And so that's also how we become self-determined by having those life experiences, trying new things, trying things differently. Sometimes, trying things that maybe don't work out so well. That's how we learn about what we like, what we don't like, what we're good at. It helps us to build we're going to talk about capacity in a minute. It helps us to build that capacity to be able to do things and make decisions and participate in life. And, an example would be, if you ask somebody, what kind of job do you want to have? Well, if they don't have life experiences where they've learned about different types of jobs that people do, they're not going to have a lot of things to choose from when they're thinking about what kind of a job they want to have. So being out there and meeting people and seeing what kind of jobs they do and asking them questions, the same thing with like, well, where do you want to live when you're an adult? Well, if the only thing you've ever, lived at is at home or even in an institution, you don't know. Do you want to live in an apartment? Do you want to live with a roommate? Do you want to live in a house? People need to have those life experiences so that they can answer some of those questions about what they want in their life and to have that clear vision. And then I think the most important part is that we all make mistakes. And so we talk about taking risks. And I know that makes people nervous sometimes in our field. But really it's about, we all take risks, right? Anytime we're making a decision, anytime we're doing something new, it's a risk. We're not talking about going and jumping off of a bridge, right? We're talking about just everyday things that we do in life. And so sometimes people want to overprotect and they think, well, that's too risky for that person to do. But they need to learn what happens when you make the wrong choice. You make a mistake, you say, oh gosh, that didn't work out so well. So what could I have done differently, right? And even having somebody to kind of mentor them and talk about, well, what would you do differently this time? What do you want to have happen when you do this again? And then trying again with a new strategy. So those life experiences, I can't talk enough about how important they really are. And then finally, making decisions about a person's own life. How can you be self-determined if someone else is making all your decisions for you? And the key is having the supports that you need if and when you need them to make those choices and decisions in your life. Next, please. So I talked a little bit about this already, but we call it the dignity of risk. And that really just means when you're having those life experiences, when you're engaging in life in general, the dignity of risk means you have the right to take risks and you have the right to make mistakes and to fail sometimes. How do you learn things like how to stay safe if you're never given the opportunity to try and fail? We want to keep people safe, but a lot of staying safe is knowing how to do that yourself, right? Not having somebody bubble wrap you all the time. And so, when we talk about overprotection, that can be very detrimental. It can really result in having lowered expectations for that person, and for that person having lowered expectations for themselves. It can cause them to learn to be dependent. I think about, when Ben was going through school, he always had a paraprofessional with him all the time. And so he really learned to be dependent on always having an adult around to help him with everything and never actually trying things for himself. And so we had some work to do to get around that dependency that he had learned, and him to learn that he can do things that maybe he thought he couldn't do before, that maybe are scary or new for him. And it can also, overprotection can also lead to a person having low self-esteem, that they're never able to make their choices and do things for themselves. And finally, underachievement. Next, please. So I believe, and this is a quote by Don Hoyle, who definitely believes that every person can make choices and has a right to make decisions. Next, please. So we're going to dig into decision making a little bit. If you really think about it, typical decision making is flawed. How do you measure whether something is a good decision or not? And we all make decisions based on our own unique circumstances, on our own wants and needs and life circumstances. And so I may make a decision that's great for me, but it may not be great for Julie, right? And so every person has to make individualized decisions. And so because of that truth, there's no way to say that my decision's good and Julie's is bad, just because we're making different decisions based on our own lives. Decisions are personal. They're based on our culture, on our values, on our life experiences. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're thinking about people with disabilities and making decisions. Next, please. We also talk a lot about, you hear the word capacity a lot. And so, you'll hear that, well, that person doesn't have the capacity to make decisions, or they don't have the capacity to do something. You have to remember that capacity is not an all or nothing proposition. And it can't be based just on a diagnosis. I have XYZ syndrome, so I can't make my own decisions. I don't have the capacity. That's not true. It's like if you think about cerebral palsy or autism, if you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. So that diagnosis doesn't really tell you anything about that person. IQ doesn't really tell you anything about that person and their capacity to know what they want and what they don't want. And really thinking about it, not from the, people get caught up, I think, in the legal capacity, right? When they think about, well, they have to have capacity to sign legal papers and do all these things. And capacity is really about knowing what you want and don't want and being able to express that to somebody. And it can be different under different circumstances. You may have the capacity to make some of your decisions, but not all of your decisions, or others that are maybe more difficult for you. Or you might be able to make decisions at certain times, but not others. Talking about Ben again, he likes to make decisions for himself about his healthcare, right? He can tell you which doctors he likes and doesn't like, and those type of things. But for instance, if he's had a seizure, he goes into a deep sleep and kind of a state of confusion for a while. And during those times, he's not able to make medical decisions. So he has to have somebody that can help him make those decisions when he's not able to. And there's lots of different examples. That's just one that I wanted to share with you, that, that sometimes you can make a decision and sometimes you can't, for various different reasons. You may not have enough information, or you may not have the understanding that you need it. But most people, all people, can usually make decisions if they get help with understanding and different things about that decision. We're going to go into some of the detail on that. Next, please. We also have to think about what COVID has done. I think even before COVID, I think parents, people who support people in their professional roles, do have a tendency to want to protect and sometimes overprotect people. And I say that as from a parent perspective. It's just the way it is. And I have to fight that all the time and think, he's an adult, he's 32, and so, and I think I think sometimes we hold people to a higher standard, right? We expect them to always make perfect decisions and not make mistakes. I know that when Ben was in school, we would get calls from the school about something that happened, and I'd be like, what do you do when the other kids do that? Do you call their parents? Well, no. Why are you doing it for Ben, right? It's a higher standard, and so it shouldn't be that way, but that's sometimes just the way it is. But I think that during COVID, and even as we're coming out of COVID, there's that increased focus on health and safety. And while health and safety is very important, it can't be the only thing. It's not the only thing in our lives. And so I think that many people, because of COVID, have been isolated, and they've had less opportunities for those life experiences, or for making decisions and choices, or certainly for taking risks. And so next slide, please. We have to find a balance, right? We want people to be healthy and safe on the one hand, but we also have to think about self-determination and dignity of risk. We can't be so focused on health and safety that people can't live the lives that they want to live, and learn to make those choices and decisions if they need help, to get the support. But we have to find that balance. We can't let that weigh too heavily towards health and safety. Next slide, please. And so when you think about, I can't talk about anything without bringing Life Course into it, right? You think about all the different aspects of our life, or the life domains, if you will, and think about all the different decisions we all make on a daily basis. Where we work, what kind of a job we want to do, if you work, right? How you spend the money that you earn, or the money that you have, with healthy living, picking out what I eat and drink, consenting or objecting to medical care, in the community where you live, where you go, who you associate with, if you drive, your legal rights, your personal safety, what do you do in emergencies? Those are all decisions that we think about. Who you date, who you marry, things like voting, advocating for your own rights, and even deciding things like who provides my personal care. That should be a very personal decision that people can make for themselves. Next, please. So I want to talk about a little bit about what supported decision making is, and why it's so important. Next, please. So really, supported decision making is really just helping people get the supports that they need so that they can make their own decisions by using people, or sometimes technology, and people that they trust, to help them with a couple of different things. First of all, we want them to really be able to understand what are the issues or the choices around something. So let's say you go to the doctor and you're asked to make a decision. You're going to want more information. You might need information in different formats, maybe plain language materials, or pictures, or receiving a spoken explanation rather than just having a piece of paper handed to you, or even watching a video. So what kind of information can we help people with? Can we help them do research about what their choices are? Can we help them? Can we do things like explaining and brainstorming their options with them? Maybe they need to take a class where they can learn about something. So all the different ways we can help people understand things. Giving advice, helping people with the pros and cons. What happens if you do this? What happens if you don't do this? What would I do in this situation is sometimes, telling people what you think you would do, but again, saying that's your choice. And then even helping remind them of things like their own values, or their own, it's like, well, you've said your vision is this, what is going to happen to your vision if you do this, or if you don't do this? Which way is your trajectory going to go? And helping people think with that. Helping people do things like ask questions, right? Whenever I go to a doctor's appointment, or something that's really important like that, I always have a list of questions I want to ask, or things that I want to talk about. And so just helping somebody with that, or having a way to use technology to do that. We talked about the explanations and understandable formats and language. And then also we talk about, communication. Sometimes people just don't have clear communication, or they get what we call like white coat syndrome. Like if you go to the doctor and all of a sudden you're nervous and you can't talk, right? Or you forget what you were going to say. So sometimes people, because even of their speech or their ability to speak or not speak, may have trouble communicating with doctors, support coordinators, other professionals. And so, sometimes they need someone to interpret that, to say that, this is what this person is trying to say. I understand their speech because I spend 24 hours a day with them, or having a communication device where they can talk about, excuse me, or they can communicate their own decision. And then sometimes people need help with things like logistics. They may be able to make a decision, but then they need help with following up. Again, using the medical field as an example. So I may decide that, yes, I do want to see this doctor and he wants me to take this medication, and I agree, but maybe I need help with scheduling follow-up appointments, or actually taking my medication. I may not be able to get the right dose out and distribute that to myself. I may need help with doing that. So all those different kind of things that we think about. So those are all lots of different ways that we can support people in making decisions. Next, please. And so if we really think about it, how do we all make decisions? What do we do if we're not, up to date or familiar with the issue? So just a quick story. So taxes, right? There's lots of different things you can use to do your taxes and what have you. And for years, I did not only my taxes, but I did Ben's twin brother's taxes for him as well while he was in college, and even his first couple of years of working. But when he moved out and had a girlfriend and they were living together and all this stuff, he wanted to do his own taxes, as he should. And so, he was using TurboTax, or I don't know what he was using, but, he got stuck, and he, of course, called me, right? Because he knew that I knew how to do some of this stuff. So he wasn't familiar with doing his own taxes. So he called and asked for help and asked for my, what would you do? Or what did you do when you came across this? Things like medical care, when you go to the doctor and you get a new diagnosis, or they want you to have a certain treatment or have a surgery or something, you want to find out everything you can about that. And so, you either do your research or you ask someone, things like auto repairs. When I was younger and my dad was still alive, if something happened to my car, that was the first person I called because I knew he knew about cars. So it's what we all do. Next, please. So really, supported decision-making is just a lot of talking about getting help when it's needed, just like we all do. Next, please. So why is it so important? What are the benefits? Why would we want to make sure that we're using decision-making supports? For one thing, it helps a person retain their legal rights. If they don't have a guardian, then they have the legal rights to do things. And when you have a guardian, your rights are very restricted. If you have a full guardian, someone is making all your decisions and all your choices for you. Again, you should still be involved in those, but that doesn't always happen. So retaining those legal rights is a big deal. Making your own decisions and directing your own life can increase your self-esteem and make you feel like, increase your self-worth. It allows for you to grow and learn new things and have new life experiences. It reduces that stigma of, well, that person can't make their own decisions. People assume a lot of things. And so they're not viewed as someone who's capable. And then if you can make your own decisions, you're viewed as being more capable of contributing to society. And most importantly, supported decision-making and using decision-making supports increases your self-determination, which, as we said earlier, people are healthier. They're able to resist and recognize abuse, all important things that come out of self-determination. Next, please. Excuse me. So again, this is just a quote, but supported decision-making has the potential to increase the self-determination of older adults and people with disabilities, encouraging and empowering them to reap the benefits from increased life control, independence, employment, and community integration. Next, please. So I'm getting ready to turn it over to Scout, but always keep in mind that star and how technology can do so many things. It can connect you with all those different parts of the stars. We're thinking about how we support people to be self-determined and make decisions. So Scout, you're up.
Okay. All right, so I hope that I will be able to be heard okay today. I had to leave the office and and run home. And so now I'm doing this on an iPad. So bear with me, please. And I just want to thank Jane. I think I could listen to, you know, the more and more about self-determination. Really, when I was putting my slides together, it was hard for me not to go with some of the advocacy and to kind of stay with the assistive technology. So it's a really important topic. Anyway, I'm glad to be here today. So, so I wrote this slide. You know, it starts with you thinking about our individual with a disability and how we always keep them, like Jane was saying, at the center and involved in any process, any kind of goal they might have, which might include assistive technology. And so I wanted to kind of go through the SET model that I've talked about before, where, you know, with any kind of goal that a person might have, any decision they might want to make, we always want to think about them. What are their strengths? You know, what do they bring to the table kind of for this goal? Where do they want to, you know, where will this happen? Is this something that is about work or about home or about the community? And what are the specific tasks that will be required to for this goal? You know, is it something, whatever, it might be vacuuming to alone time to dating, but you know, so is it grabbing the vacuum cleaner? Is it making decisions about being alone? You know, think about those tasks. And then what are the barriers and how do we address those? So of course, not every barrier will be addressed by assistive technology. But what, for me, what is important is always, with any goal, is always keeping that in mind, that is there a piece of technology that can support this individual so that they are more independent and have more of that control themselves. You know, so like I said, when I started this slide, when I wrote, it starts with you, I really did think about the person with a disability. But as I was going through, I'm thinking, you know, like Jane said, there are plenty of folks out there who kind of become disempowered as they go through life with so many people, you know, very caringly doing everything for them. And so sometimes it actually does start with us, the community of support around people, to really encourage folks to take those steps and to, you know, have more goals and to take those risks. I'm a big fan of the dignity of risk. So anyway, let's go on to our next slide. All right, so self-advocating for AT. So there's plenty of folks out there who will decide, hey, I need help. I've done my research and I've decided this is the device for me. Or they have a task and they are ready to do some research and reach out to their support systems and find out, you know, what is it that I need? So one of the things, you know, kind of a roadmap for this that can be very helpful is when somebody does their research and finds a device that they think is going to help them meet a goal, is actually do a trial. If the individual can get their hands on, whether it's an app or a tangible device, but get their hands on it and really see if it meets that need. I have 100 stories, way more, about people actually deciding on something until they try it. And then they realize, you know, maybe it doesn't do the actual thing I wanted it to do. And then, you know, of course, lots of times it does. But our demonstration centers, which are located throughout Missouri, which all can be found on our website, are great places to try equipment. If you don't have a demonstration center near you, you can borrow devices from our lending library. You know, it's just a great way to help determine if a device is actually going to work. And then, of course, you know, funding a device, whether it's large or small, the kind of that, you know, map to funding is another thing to think about. So if it's a small item, it might be an easy thing to say, hey, I can self-pay for this, or I can use some waiver funding. You know, or if it's a larger item, it might be somebody said, this is really important, and I'm going to look for state or local funding sources, or even take out a low interest loan to get this device. Again, low interest loans for assistive technology is a program that we provide, and it's a great way for somebody to make their own decisions, take that responsibility of taking on basically that monthly bill, and building credit, and purchasing that device themselves. So that is our Show Me Loan program, and it's a great way to take on some new responsibility. You know, I also put in the link to our recent funding webinar, which I think had a million resources, and I encourage people to check it out if they didn't. We also have a funding guide on our website, which I put the link to, and so there's access to that. So, you know, just really kind of checking out what is it that somebody wants, finding out if it's really the right thing, searching for funding, and then moving forward. I think now we're going to jump into actual devices. So yeah, so today I'm going to break it into different apps and then different devices. And I just picked a few areas of kind of focus areas for this. But of course, you know, there's all kinds of assistive technology out there. So this first section is for reminders and scheduling, and you know, a little bit of communication-based supports. So here we're going to look at apps for managing basically like a schedule. So the first one I put in is the Medsafe pill reminder. There are a number of medication apps that are out there and available. A lot of them are free of charge, and they just will do that task of keeping somebody on track to take their medications. It is, I have found it's a place where a lot of people, whether they are transitioning from like a home environment to living on their own, or they're getting older and really, you know, like memory is starting to be an issue. These are both areas that either devices or apps can be really helpful, because keeping on the medication schedule, of course, is a huge benefit for health. All right. I also want to look at things like managing a schedule. You can use a Google Calendar. So again, there's lots of calendar apps that are out there. Some of the benefits of the Google Calendar are it is something you can share with other people, and you can create, you can color code the activities. So if you have a job or a volunteer job that you have to have your times on your schedule, you can make those all one color. Your social activities can be another color, and your appointments for doctors or anything else can be yet another color. And I have found that really helpful for a lot of folks. One of the downsides of the Google Calendar is you do have to have internet access. So we're going to do First Then Visual Scheduler. So First Then Visual Scheduler is a great way to have a task list and get make sure that it's easy to see and get all the pieces done. You know, whether it's getting ready for work, or it could be a task, like organizing an event. It could be, I'm going to host a party and I want to make sure I have all the steps done to be ready for that. But that can be put in there and it can be arranged in a way that works for the user. So it can have one task on a screen or 6 tasks on a screen, and you check them off in different ways, and it's really customizable. So, and Pictello is nice because it's a way to make social stories. So for that, especially like for an individual who might get nervous meeting people, and so maybe they can communicate, but maybe when they're meeting someone, it's hard for them, and they can make a social story that might and you can use a digitized voice or you can use your own voice, and you can introduce yourself and break that ice. I mean, you can use it for any kind of social story or visual schedule, but it does include, you can include pictures, your own pictures, and your own voice, which is just some nice features. So again, there's lots out there. And these are just a few to kind of cover that area. So we can move on to the next slide. All right, so let's look at some tools for reminders and scheduling. So I showed the app for med planning, and in the middle here I have the Amazon Echo Show, which we use at my house for scheduling medication. I mean, we use it for lots of things, but it is a really nice device for medication reminders, for appointment reminders, for all those kinds of things. Also good for decision making in that way of like, what's the weather out? What do I need to wear? But we'll keep to reminders and scheduling. One of the nice things that I use in the Echo Show is actually my wife started taking a morning medication, which was out of our routine, and so she found herself continually forgetting it, but she did not want the voice in the box to tell her to take her medication. So I set up the reminder, and every morning she is reminded to jump rope. So it's a way you can set it up in a customizable way to make it work for that person. Now, not everybody is going to associate jumping rope with taking medication, but just in that way of however you want to set it up, you can. Below that is a locking med. It's called the Med Alert, a med planner that you can set up to the needed schedule. It has a timer on it. And this is really nice if someone is struggling to take their medications. This one, if you get past the time when you can take that medication, it'll move on to the next location and lock out lock out the one that's missed. So helps people take the right medication, does have an alarm, but also shows any kind of caregiver or support person that when it's successful and maybe when it's not. The chore chart. Sorry, the mailman came. Okay, we're good. Hey, sorry about that. Hey, I apologize. The chore chart is great, as you can see, for listing the chores, whatever has to be done. But but even if you are wanting, if what you're trying to do is do some advocacy work, you could have a list of Missouri representatives on there that you want to call to work on whatever you're working on. And you could use that. You can use your chore chart for any kind of activity that makes sense. So really easy. I mean, you have your slider for like, I've done this task, or I've still need to do this task. The time timer in the upper corner is great for having a visual timer of how much time is left. So whatever activity you're doing, I've used this for folks who had a hard time remembering when to take their breaks. And actually, so you can use a time timer. There's apps for that as well. And then this bottom one is called Goalie. And I threw this in here kind of at the end, deciding that, I better hurry. You can have it as a dedicated device or an app, but I'm showing this dedicated device because some people are really good using a touch screen, but get too distracted to have other apps there. So this one is an option for a dedicated device that is for tasks and keeping folks on task with their goals. All right, I better keep going. Next slide. All right, let's look at some decision making. So I will say there's not a lot of apps that support decision making, but because it is, you know, a huge part of this, I'm trying to help people think about how do we make decisions. So Smart Steps is one of those apps that is designed for decision making. It is an app that is kind of designed for that transition age person when something has gone wrong. So there are prompts like, I lost something, my ride is late, I have a question, I have a work question, and it takes you through some supported decision making for any of those kind of problems. So it is kind of an interesting app. So, and then Tiny Decisions is really just that. There's some fun ways to use Tiny Decisions. And you can do anything from coin flipping to a weighted decision wheel. So whether you're trying to pick a restaurant or or do something else, but just for folks who may have anxiety about those small decisions, this is a way to make those happen a little more easily. And then I did throw in Mood Meter because this is a way to identify emotions, because sometimes decision making can be very anxiety producing, or sometimes we need to check ourselves before we talk or even make a decision. If we have a lot of emotion about something, sometimes, you know, like taking that breath of like, okay, here's how I'm feeling now. And if I calm myself a little bit, I might make a better decision. So being more in touch with kind of the, you know, emotional intelligence can lead to better decision making for some folks. So I threw that one in there as well. All right, let's look at our tools. All right, so again, not a lot of tools designed for decision making. So it is kind of a random assortment. So of course there's, you know, flipping the coin. If it is a decision that it can be either or, sometimes that it can still be difficult, and we can go right to the coin flipping to make that decision. I also put in a weather radio. So a weather radio can be a great tool for that safety kind of decision making. You know, it might come on the TV, the storm is coming, but when do you actually need to make a plan to do something, or not make the plan, but do something, take that action of, do I need to go in my basement? Do I need to, you know, whatever the step is. And so the weather radio has great information, not only on alerts like the tornado is coming, but also, you know, when the heat is very high, It can remind you to stay inside and not do strenuous activity, and just, make some of those choices that can be very good for health and safety. I did put in a video, like a video doorbell. So the camera outside of the home can help people make those decisions. Is this somebody I know? Do I want to open the door and let them in? Is something good going to happen? Is something I don't know going to happen? Is this, and again, making that decision with more information about who's on the other side of the door can be helpful. And then again, I just put in a random assortment of fidgets, again, for that anxiety reducing moment to make those decisions. If I'm less anxious, I can make a better decision. So whatever it is that can help any individual calm down and make good decisions. Maybe even take their mind off the fact that they have to make a decision. They can just be beneficial. All right, I'm going to move on. I think we have a commercial break. Oh yes, independence in AT usage. So one of the things that's nice to remember is that getting AT is not the end. It is maybe a middle stage. There's lots of steps to acquiring the right piece of equipment. And but once somebody has that equipment, we need to make sure that they have all the skills to be successful. So, do I have operational skills? Do I know how to turn on, turn off, charge, open apps on my iPad? That is my operational skill. But what about my functional skill? So if I have a task I'm using an app for, do I know how to open that app, how to manage that app? Do I know what that app is intended for? And, how do I get help with that? How do I functionally use that to help me with my goals? And then what about the strategic skills? When do I use it and when do I not? When is this going to be the thing that is supporting me? And when is this getting in my way? So again, if you have that communication device that you're using for some situations, maybe I don't need it in all situations. And do I have the capacity to really be able to choose when it's a support for me? And then the social skills, kind of the same. Do I have that ability to decide this is a good way to integrate this technology in this activity, or when I'm around other people, when is it most appropriate and most supportive and really functional for me? So that's just a commercial break about making sure all the steps are covered and that individual has all the support they need to really effectively use any assistive technology that they might get. So now we can move on to our next slide. All right, let's look for apps for writing. So I think that there's lots of points when I probably should have done reading and writing, but that writing can be a great thing for taking notes, for writing a document. I don't know if somehow I have this idea of like I'm kind of stuck on writing to the elected officials or meeting with elected officials. But whatever kind of meeting you might have, whether it's going to the doctor and you want to take some notes for yourself so that you can share those with the doctor, or whether you are meeting with elected officials and pushing forward the agenda that helps you live more fully. There's lots of ways that we can support writing with different apps. So Dragon, which is from Dragon Naturally Speaking, is a great app for speech to text. So if actually writing is difficult, but speaking is not, then Dragon is just a great way. There are lots of ways to get speech to text these days. Dragon is just one of them. It is kind of a high quality, but speech to text is really getting better kind of everywhere. Google Docs, probably many of you have used Google Docs. A great way to work on something with somebody else, share documents, not have to save because of the autosave feature. I find that is a nice, a helpful feature of the Google Docs. So, but really easy to use, very manageable. Again, you do have to have internet access for that. Dictionary.com, Grammarly, those kinds of things, just those supports. You know, I use it all the time. You know, everybody needs to learn how to know how to spell a word now and then, or I want to use this word, but am I actually using it properly? And so having a dictionary app can be a good way to figure that out. And then iWordQ. iWordQ is a great writing support. Let me see. It is a flat fee, which is nice for right now. Lots of things are going to annual fees. It's a flat fee to get this app. It has great word prediction, which is really, really helpful. And it has easy to use text to speech. So if I write something and I'm not sure if I've written the right thing, I can use that text to speech to see how that sounds. And I can, make it go as slow as I need or as fast as I need. It does not offer speech to text, but it does offer really great supports for writing. So that's what we have. Let's look at some devices for writing. Oh, we're almost out of time. Okay. We have a slant board, very helpful. Pencil grips, they can make all the difference. We talked about the environment. So noise canceling headphones can really make the difference between somebody being able to really focus on their thoughts or not. The Livescribe Pen is amazing. You can take your notes, you can record them, you can re-listen to them, poke around on the page you listen to, and you can download your notes to the computer. If you haven't ever played with the Livescribe Pen, I highly recommend you checking it out. They just came out with the new version. All right, but let's move on to the next slide. Apps for budgeting. There's a couple of great apps for budgeting. There's a zillion apps for budgeting out there. A talking calculator can be really a great support for any kind of math calculations. So whether you're tracking a little or a lot, your whole expenses or just a few things, a budgeting app can be really useful. And I'm going to fly to the next slide of devices, which again, there's not a lot out there. I have a talking calculator. There's actually budgeting notebooks. And I put the dog in there because why not always have a cute robotic dog if you can't have a real dog? But budgeting for animals is a serious commitment, financial commitment. And so you could actually start with a robotic pet and see if that is an easier way to get your needs met, or you could actually budget for if you were really feeding and taking a dog to the vet and seeing how that works. All right, I think I have one or two more slides that I'm going to try to slip in the last second. Oh, we're going to skip this. We're going to move on to the next slide. All right, we are going to have 1 second on dating. And all I want to say is with the right education, support, and practice, individuals with developmental disabilities can and do have healthy relationships. We know this. Sometimes it's easy to forget this. There's actually apps out there for dating. I mean, Ellie has a disabled dating app. Heartmates is an app that really tries to connect people kind of in different ways than some of the standard dating apps. And I was asked, why Uber? And I thought, you know what? I don't want my mom driving me on my first date or my fifth date. So getting used to Uber and being able to get out in the community can be a really important piece. If you want more information, next slide, please, on dating, there's some great articles out there. So I went ahead and threw these in. I really love this first one. It goes through just about any aspect of that. So I recommend those, and my time is over.
Seconds. Scout, thank you so much. Jane, thank you so much. 2023, and who can believe that? So next time we're going to talk a little bit about family life and assistive technology. Then October is employment, disability employment month. So we'll do it then. Next slide real quick. If you have questions, comments, anything like that, there's the Life Course Nexus side, www.lifecourse.com or com, one of those. The last slide just gives you our contact information if you need anything from us or want to contact us. I super appreciate all you guys being here. 2 quick comments I put in the chat. My mom has that dog Scout, but he has a blue bandana. And as you were talking and your dog was barking, my dog were barking at them too. So it just happens to all of us. So y'all, thank you again. We hope to see you next month. Hope you enjoyed. Angelina, I forgot to even ask if there were polls. Is there a closing poll? That's my one thing I missed. And if there's not, it's okay.
Somebody did ask if I could share my links in the chat. I cannot do that from here, but my email should be available. If anybody, if we can't get them into the chat, if anybody wants to email me, I will be glad to pass those along.
Yeah, and I'm dropping them in right now before people leave.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thing is, in about a week or so, you'll get an email from our team. It's actually our executive producer with the links to this video online and with the slides, and you're welcome to share those with anybody. But thank you again. We'll see you next month, and we appreciate you coming. Bye, everybody.
Bye.